Hello there, this is Debbie Heiser, and I am so stinking excited to share this new season 4 with you. And I can't believe that this is already the 4th season of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. And I just want to thank each of you who listen. And my hope is that the tools, the thoughts and experiences I share, as well as the work I've done to love myself, love others, and love the work I'm called to do, that also helps me lead a truly lit up life, will help you move into a more lit up life yourself. A few things to look for in this season. Super excited to share that we're going to be coming to you now every week with episodes jam-packed with information to serve you. Every other week, you'll hear from a guest who's leading a life that they love, and I'll be asking them to share their stories, how they got there, and any thoughts or advice that they can give you, our loyal listeners. We have new music too, and I'm so thrilled to introduce this song called Ride, sung and co-written by my friend, Miss Jackie Wilson. And she, along with her collaborators, Tyler Banks, David DJ Lee, and Chris Renee, are super talented and generous, as this song fits perfectly into the thought of stepping into your best life. To follow any or all of these talented folks, check out the show notes for their social handles. Thanks again for listening. Enjoy season 4 and do us a solid and leave us a rating and a comment to help us be able to share more with people across the globe. Now, let's get started with this episode.
You're the only one who really can transform your mind.
Good day to all of you. This is Debbie Heiser with Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser, and I am super excited to have my friend Gail Tipton on with us today. And Gail and I have, I think we first met maybe back in 2014 when I first started at Turning Point Revenue Cycle Solutions, the company that I was a CFO for. And Gail worked for Turning Point and still does. And we, throughout the years, she continued to work for us off and on. We placed people temporarily into project-based items in the medical field. And so Gail and I started talking one day and I said, let's connect. I have Gail's moving into kind of a coaching, and I'm going to let her talk about her professional life, but she really intrigued me as I watched her through Facebook, and she does these awesome like singing, and somebody will be recording it for her, and these like beautiful songs that come out of your mouth. And then she is an author and written a book. She is speaking at different events and really making an impact on the world. And what I love about Gail is this is a perfect example for me, Gail, of how you can be called into doing something that you feel like is your vocation and your purpose in this world, and still work full-time somewhere. Like it doesn't have to be that you step in and it's just you're running your whole business by your, like as a business full-time. You can do a business of your own, whether it be speaking, being an author, and doing these things that you do that I'm going to ask you to talk about in a second, and still do work elsewhere too that helps from a financial perspective to do what you feel called to do. I've talked to my listeners before about when I worked at Citibank. I was a volunteer youth pastor, and to me that filled my soul. And the job I had at Citibank helped allow me to go do then what I felt called to do at that moment. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm so happy to have you, and let you kind of introduce yourself from a professional perspective, and then we'll just start having a conversation.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's definitely a privilege and an honor, really, to be able to just have a conversation with you and for your listeners and things. It's always, I always love those opportunities when you can reach more people, right? And so I thank you for that. My name is Gail Tipton. I am a senior revenue management consultant and business analyst, which they're like, well, what does that mean? Which simply means that I go in as a consultant on the finance revenue side into healthcare systems, right? And whatever they need, that's what I do when I go there. So it could be operations management, interim operations management. It could be project management. It could be process improvement, all of those things. It could be training, developing leaders. actually, which is one of the parts that I enjoy the most about what I do, is training and developing leaders and process improvement. Those things, they speak to me. And I find that I do that a lot in every part of my life. So it's very fulfilling for me. I appreciate that. So I do that sort of as a job or as a career, right? But then I also, I am a singer, as you mentioned. But one of my friends corrected me the other day. He is a musician and he plays the guitar. And he told me, somebody asked me if I was a musician, and I corrected them and I said, I'm a vocalist. And he said, why do vocalists and singers think they're not musicians? I was like, okay, I stand corrected. I'm also a musician. My voice is my instrument, which is
that
right.
is true.
So, right. So I am a musician, vocalist, singer, right? I do write songs. I also am a what I like to call living by divine design life coach. And so I coach everybody, but particularly I coach women in transition. So whether it's married to single to married, without children, with children, changing jobs, all those kinds of things. And so that's what I also do. And then I am an author too. I'm a published author. I just published my second book. And so, and this was the first book that I was the solo author. So I was very, very happy about that. Got a couple more books coming probably toward the end of the year, first part of the next year. So yeah, just doing a lot of things, very active in our church, very active in coaching other couples, leading other couples, counseling. My husband and I do that. So yeah, my life is pretty full.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Gail. And just so that the listeners know, the name of the book that we're talking about is called Pray, Laugh, Serve, an Odyssey into Resolve and Restoration by Gail Tipton. So look it up. It's out on Amazon. It's well worth the read. And I want to go back to something. You talk about being a coach for women in transition. And I find that it feels like in life period that my mentor always says there's point A and point B, and you're never at point A and you're never at point B. You're always in transition because once you get to point B, then it becomes point A and you have a different point B.
Absolutely.
Right?
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So when you work with women, what do you find? Like, do you find some common themes or areas where people might struggle a little bit in that transition, or where they might fear something the most?
I will say it this way, the consistent theme is the lack of identity and knowing who they are. Sometimes people connect so much of who they are to that thing, whether it was a relationship, whether it was a job, whether it was whatever it was, that was their identity. And when their life has moved in a direction that is no longer, or they can no longer identify with that, because there's, for whatever the reason is or are, if they are no longer connected to that, now they find they feel as if they don't identify anywhere, right? And so what I do is to remind them that your identity is your identity, no matter what it is that you're doing, right? And I find that a lot with women in particular, because by nature and how we've been created is that, we're nurturers and we care for people, and sometimes to, a detriment to ourselves and things like that. And so when you're not having those things to do and being all things to all people, and whatever you're doing it in, when that's gone, then it's like, well, what am I to do? I don't have anything that I identify with. Then we can have conversations about your passion and your purpose, right? So that's what I find most common.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And I don't know about you, Gail, but for those of you listening, Gail and I both share the same faith base. And for me and for Gail, we use, the terminology of God and Christ and the Spirit. And for those of you listening, if you use something else, that just try to replace that and don't let this hang you up. But for me, I don't know about you, Gail, and I find this with other people too, is that I tend to lose sight of the fact that my identity really isn't in those external things.
Absolutely.
Right. And so it's always a good reminder. And that's what I love. I always love talking to you, because it's always a really good reminder that to ground myself in the fact that if I'm a child of God, then like that's the identity.
Yeah.
And I can step into that with confidence and step into anything I do, right? Because there's a difference between who we are as a being and what
Yes.
we do. And that's what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing you say, is you help them
Yes.
kind of separate that and figure out, what is it that I'm being? What's my character? Who am I?
Absolutely.
And then we'll figure out what you're going to do with that.
Yes. 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 Absolutely. 100%. You hit it.
Good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, and I have a question for you.
Mhm.
What are you doing to live your lit up life? Because I know you are.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because a friend of mine from high school, I graduated high school, 100 years ago. But a friend of mine from high school said to me the other day on Facebook, she's like, Gail, you just love, how people say that you live your life kind of out loud. You really do. And I was probably very much different from that in high school. I wasn't like an introvert, like I've never been an introvert, but there was a lot of expressions of myself that I didn't put out there in front of people. There were certain things that they saw, like I was always into music and singing and acting, and I played football and soccer and things like that, right? But the other parts of me, probably they didn't really see as boldly as I lived my life, right? And I just told her, I said, I just endeavor to live my life full of passion and on purpose. Like, so knowing what it is that I'm meant to do. And it took me, I'm saying it in a way as if it came really easy for me to have that realization. It didn't come easy, right? I really had to inquire as to what is it that I am to be doing? Like, what is it that I am to be doing and being and giving to the world? And once I found that, and once I understood it, that it can be expressed in so many different areas, whether it's coaching and writing and singing and speaking, because I do a large degree of that too, conference speaking and things. I realized that in that way, I'm so connected to purpose in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so connected to the purpose. And when I know that I'm connected to purpose, then I'm passionate, and my life is, I never thought, I think I dreamt it, or maybe I wrote about it because I'm a big journaler too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I probably did write about it at some point, that the life that I'm experiencing and living now is the life that I always wanted to live. And I always wanted to live my life in a way where it was lit up, right? Because we understand that, when there's a light that shines so brightly, whatever that light is, however that light is shining, it can't be hid, right? And so it's almost like once it's out there, it's like, I'm shining. Sorry, not sorry.
I love that. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you talked about it not being easy, and I understand that. But when you think about that, like, how did you figure out, and I don't want you to give away all your magic sauce, right? But like, how did you figure this out for yourself? How did you figure out what made you passionate, and what help did you get along the way?
Yes, that's a great question. And actually I talk about that in the first book that I was fortunate enough to write with 25 other professional women across the country. How to break the glass ceiling without a hammer, career strategies for women. And the chapter that I wrote, I said, I didn't come to myself and know who I really was meant to be and to give to the world until one of our great mentors, my husband and I both, said, you are unique. And now that sounds like, well, yeah, duh, Gail. But no, I mean, seriously. So when you grow up and you grow up in a family like I did, where I come from a family of musicians and singers, like powerful musicians and singers. Now that might sound like all people that are Black grow up in that. Not true.
Not true. Yeah.
Not true.
Nor do whites.
Oh, right. Not true. It's like all Black people can't play basketball. So even if they're tall. So right. So but I happen to grow up in that kind of a family. And so when you grow up in that kind of a family and I mean, my dad had the voice like very close to like a David Ruffin from the Temptations. I mean, that was his kind of voice. So when I started gonna sing, here I am Black, and I'm gonna sing in the church. Oh, she's gotta sound like Aretha. She must sound like Aretha. And then I open my mouth and I start singing and I start singing these melodies and I sing, just different things. And they're like, huh, okay. Wait, oh, okay. All right, oh, okay. Are you gonna sing standards? Okay, contemporary, okay. It's like, and so I had to embrace that because for a long time, just in that expression of myself, I had to own who I was. And I had to really understand that that's how I was created. I was created with this kind of a voice. I was created because I know that there's a purpose for this kind of a voice, the people that are going to hear it and what it will do to them, because music, we all know, transcends so many things, right? Language barriers, cultures, all kinds of things, right? So, but just that little tidbit for him to say, you are unique. You have a uniqueness in God, which is what he said specifically. And so I began to inquire about what makes me unique in this, what makes me unique in that. And so once I began to study, and that was still, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago still. So it was a journey as to just consistently applying myself, inquiring, what is it that I'm supposed to do? What is it that makes me so unique? And what is it that's so different about me and my writing and my speaking and my singing and my whatever that is unique to how I've been created and how I've been fashioned. So it's still a work in progress, Debbie. I mean, it really is. I mean, every day I was just inquiring of some things, before you and I started talking about just the next thing, because sometimes people, if there is something new to there to do in their life, or they're looking for that new thing that maybe was promised to them that's happening in their life now, sometimes if we're not careful, I'll put it that way, if we're not careful, we'll look less to what the new thing is and inquiring about that and start looking about what's the next thing? What's the next thing I'm going to do? What's the next thing? And I'm like, no, I just want to sit back. I just want to hang back and I just want to listen. And I want to know what it is that I am to do. What is that new thing that I am to do? What is that person that I am to touch next and how I am to touch them, right? But it's an everyday, it's an everyday journey, and I'm excited about it. I'm just like, I never thought I would be excited, to be honest, but and the way that I say it to friends is that it's almost like you're swimming in this big ocean, right? And you're not quite where you want to go, or you're not quite to the destination, but you're so far from where you came from that it's just closer to keep going to the destination and try to go back. And that's where I am. That's where I am. So
well, fantastic. So what's in store? You talked about another couple of books.
Yes.
And like, where do you see your future continuing to evolve?
Yeah. So I really am just really sensing that the next or the part of the new thing that I am to do is to really launch, if you will, my brand, to really launch Passion Life 365. And because I can't tell you, there's people that see me 3 or 4 times a week and they have no idea what I do for a profession. They don't understand, they don't know, or they see me in this arena and they're like, I didn't even know she did that. So as Passion Life 365, I want to launch the brand so people understand what Passion Life 365 is and everything that's entailed in that brand, whether it's a podcast, whether it's the books that I've written, my music, speaking, teaching, all those kinds of things. And so that's coming up mid-October. And then the two books will be coming out. One book will be more of a devotional book, because in the first book that I wrote, I took a theme for a few lines of that chapter, defining life's moments, and how individuals may say, well, I had this or that happen and it was a life defining moment. And so, and I was always this kid, right? When somebody would say something, I'm like, really? One moment define your whole life? That's interesting. So I took that when I was writing, and I said, I don't know if one moment, I get what people mean when they say that. Mm-hmm. So no diss to that, right? But I just started thinking, can one moment truly define an entire life? So that book is called Defining Life's Moments, and it's taken from a blog that I started. And then, and I'm putting that in a devotional book, right? And then it's a spiritual worship book that I'm writing that I should have written like probably 19, 20 years ago. But, timing is everything.
That's right.
So we'll be that. And then more music. Actually, good. Pray, Laugh, Serve. Well, the audiobook will be coming out too. So I'll be recording that in the next week or so. So the audiobook will be coming out.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So I want to go back, because to your point about defining moment and the life, can you think back to maybe, if you had to categorize them, the top 5, maybe one pivotal moment in your life that has led you to this point?
The pivotal moment that led me to this point, quite frankly, transparently, just was when I gave my life to God. When I did that, there were so many things that I never understood about this little girl, Gail, that was created, right?
Yeah.
And this happened 32 years ago now, right? And so, and of course, there's been some bumps, there's been some things along the way, along this journey, right? That has really, different things change and things that you don't expect, right? Life happens, right? And so things that maybe you didn't plan for, or you didn't intend, unintended consequences of things, decisions you made and things like that throughout those years. But that was the major thing that happened, or major event that happened in my life over 30 some years ago. And then I will tell you that, fast forward maybe 20 years after that, 15 years after that, one day I was just kind of sitting and just kind of meditating, right? And my time, and I just really felt like I'm on a journey. And I just felt like I'm on a journey. And I felt like the Spirit was saying to me, you're on a journey. Keep your eyes open. And I thought, whoa. Yeah. So I've been endeavoring to do that, Debbie. I've really been endeavoring to understand where I'm at, where I'm seated, right? Where I'm going. I may not know, I know what direction that I'm headed in, but I may not know the hows and the wheres along the way.
Yeah.
But when I got that, I thought, and then maybe about 5 or 8 years ago, I felt like I'm on a journey, keep my eyes open and take great notes. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just really endeavoring to do that. And then I feel like when it's time for me to kind of execute anything that I see, then I will know that, because I have peace. I have peace. I have peace to do this thing. And I have the wisdom, because wisdom helps us know kind of once we put all of our plans and all of our strategies together, right? Wisdom tells us, okay, now is the time, right? Yeah. And so, so that's those were the two things that really have led me to this point for sure.
Nice. You make me think about the fact that I say, that I'm in my right vehicle. I feel like for
Mm,
the first time between the work I do at Gonzaga, my coaching, the having a teaching background, all of these things that I've done in my life are now I'm in the right car, right? I don't want to say I've arrived because to me that makes me feel like I'm at the pearly gates, but like I'm in the right vehicle. And that's
yeah.
kind of what I hear you saying too, that because I too had that feeling all throughout my life, like being a teacher, being in corporate education from a training department perspective and sales, all of these things led to where I'm at today. And I
Hmm.
felt like I was always in training for something, right?
Yeah.
Like training was my profession, but in training for something
Yeah.
and feeling like it's finally there. And that's what I hear you saying, like taking that step, knowing that that's coming for you. And that's somewhat of how I define faith, right? Like for me in the biblical sense, it talks about having faith in the unseen. And so faith is about having a vision, knowing that you're meant to do something bigger, but you're not 100% what that is, or
Mhm.
having an idea of what that might be, but you don't have to know every step in between. You take the first step and
Mhm.
then the next one appears,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And then you
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
that step and then the next one
Hmm.
appears. And when I say
Hmm.
it appears, it also, what I say drops in, like you have a deep, wise knowing,
Yes.
because I'm a firm believer too that God is a God of clarity, not confusion.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And so when we get clear and then it drops in, we just have to
Hmm.
stay the course, right? And that's what I hear you
Yeah.
saying. I'm staying the course as
Yes.
I go forward. So
Yes. Yes.
hats
Yes.
off to you. That's
Yeah. So
fantastic.
thank you. Thank you. And again, I know it's definitely, and people say this and it just sounds cliche, but it's really true. It's a work in progress.
Mhm.
I was just reading today about how, just a reminder that, I am his workmanship, his
Yeah.
masterpiece, right? And when you know that, you like, man, it don't, usually a masterpiece, no one sits down and creates this masterpiece, in a couple of hours, minutes, or
Right.
a day even.
Right.
They go back and they look at it and they put a little bit more on it and they add more color and more diversions and more, shapes and more textures. And I love that. I love that, so I'm excited about it. I
Okay,
am.
so I have a really random, weird question. Do you have
Okay.
pictures of your children or grandchildren on your refrigerator?
No.
Oh, you're not a refrigerator magnet person then.
Listen, I am, but on the refrigerator, I have magnets of places I traveled.
Oh, nice, which is
Yeah, so
plenty. I know
I
that.
have magnets of places that I've traveled. However, I am expecting my first grandbaby in
Oh, that's
November, so
right.
that might change. I might have
That's
the
right.
whole refrigerator full with him.
Well,
Yes.
and part of that was random, but I'll tell you why I brought that up. There's a really good book that I read, and I don't remember. I think it's The Great House of God by Max Lucado. And he
Oh,
talks about and breaks down the Lord's Prayer into different rooms. And he talks about when you first walk into the house, how excited he is and like shares with you all these pictures of everybody. I think it was above the mantle, mine's on the refrigerator, but and how you are a unique picture in that picture of the family, right?
yes.
And how you talk about that uniqueness and those types of things. So that just made me think of it. So let,
Yeah.
let me ask you, Gail, if someone says to you, what's your purpose for being here? What do you say to them?
Hmm. My purpose, quite simply, is to teach people really how to navigate through life. Obviously, first identifying what is it that you're passionate about, because whatever you're passionate about is a good indication that you'll have a grace for it. That
Yeah.
God gives you a grace for that, gives you the know-how and an ease to take part in that, but also to help. It's also connected to your divine purpose, right? And
Mhm.
so, what my passion and my purpose really is to help people identify that, and however that means to help them identify that is what my purpose is, and I'm really passionate about it. I mean, we talked at the onset about how sometimes people um, particularly women when they're in transition, just the identity is a big thing. Identity is a big thing for anybody, but particularly for women. And so I just believe that God has allowed different experiences, different relationships, just placed me in different places and with different people and having my hand on some things where that I can speak to so many areas, right?
Yeah.
And he allowed those experiences. And oftentimes when you're experiencing something, you're asking, why am I experiencing this? Good or bad? Yeah. I'm not saying it's all like, but good or bad. And you just wonder, but then you understand that when you're faced with someone or you encounter somebody and they start asking you those kinds of questions that that you would only know that because you experienced that. And then I understand, okay, God, I get it. I get why I experienced it. I got why I saw this. I get why I was exposed to this, whatever it is, good and bad. And then that way I can be a servant to other people, and everything that I do, I just serve people.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I have one final question for you.
Okay.
And I wish I could claim this, but I can't. Rachel Hollis was the one that came up with this. But
I like her. I don't want to
know. I do too. So she talks about how a lot of times men and women both do this, but particularly women, if you look at this glass isn't see-through, but if you imagine a vase, right? We have this unending supply of water going into this vase. But we tend to turn that vase and cut off the water supply and pour out into everybody else, right? You've talked about that early on, like as women that doing multiple things. So like we pour out ourselves and then we end up empty because we've cut off the supply, right? In our martyrdom, and I'm just going to say it how I see it, right? So it might be different, but like in our martyrdom, we become a little bit of the victim and a little bit of the rescuer where we're wanting to run in and rescue everybody and pour into them versus standing straight and allowing that unending flow to come into us so that then we get filled and that abundance is what gets poured out to everybody else. And I hear you saying that's part of what you're helping people do so that they can see what their purpose is and stand tall in that and confident in that.
Yes.
Tell me one thing, because to me, self-care is a part of that, but to me, that's like a surface level. And I know too, from a spirituality perspective, that's a big key for you. But those two things aside, what are some things that Gail does to stand in that vase and allow that water to come into you? Because every time I interact with you, I get the impression that I'm getting your abundance.
Well, that's right? Good. That's good.
Like I'm getting your overflow. There's been times I know that I'd emailed you and I'm a little snappy because I'm doing like 18 things and you're like, hi, Debbie, it's a beautiful day. And I'm like, oh, it's such a great reminder, right? Of I need to live in the attitude of gratitude. And so give us one or two things that you do yourself to make sure outside of the spiritual piece and outside of, well, I don't remember what I said the first one was, but like, tell us what you do. What do you do to keep yourself that abundance all the time so that we get the overflow?
Yeah, that's a great question. Wow, that's a great question. The one major thing that I do, and again, everything is a work in progress and it's every day. And I can't say I've done this for 10, 20 years, but definitely in the last handful of years, is that I am very, very, very protective of my environment. I am very protective of my environment and who I welcome into my environment. Now that might sound like, oh, really? You don't want people? What I mean is that because I love, Like, I love people. Like, I just like, I take people just at face value. It's like, you don't have no problem with me. I love you, you know?
Right.
so,
Right.
I always am very embracing of people. But when I say that I'm mindful of my environment, is that I'm very mindful of the kind of words that are spoken in my environment. I'm very big into imagery, you know. I'll give you just a really quick example, Debbie.
Yeah.
So I was in here in my office, and I could hear the television on in the family room, which I left on when I got home this morning from prayer. And I could, all of a sudden, I could hear this, like the music changed. And it was really, and I was like, what is that? Like, what is that? And so I went in there, and I don't know what kind of movie was about to come on or whatever, but all I knew is that I didn't like it. I just didn't. I didn't like what it was starting, how I was starting to feel, and what type of an environment that it could have created. And again, I don't know what it was, what they were going to say. I didn't take the time to listen or watch or see anything like that. But that's a major thing that I do, is that because, you know, as you and I believe, in anybody that believes in reading the word, you know, the word says that guard your heart, for out of it flows the issues of life.
Yeah.
And that's a scripture that's really close to my heart, because I do want to guard my heart. I do want to be mindful of, just be very mindful, be very diligent over what I'm seeing, what I'm giving my time and my attention to, what type of environments that I'm allowing myself in that may not be conducive to the things that I want to come out of me.
Sure. Yeah. That totally makes sense.
So that's the major thing. I want to say that is like, that helps Gail. That's Gail Tipton 101.
Yeah. Thank you. And you know what, 2 quick things. Like, what I hear you say is there was just a vibrational, because I am a firm believer too, that everything on this earth is energy. Right? We're made up of neurons and protons, which are energetic forces. And so, like, there was a weird vibration coming from that TV, right?
Yeah.
Some weird energy coming from there. And so I think too, a really important key point to that, Gail, that I find a lot of times is that people don't trust their inner voice. Like, you trusted your inner voice and said, I want to shut this off. I don't want it in my environment. And it's okay to want that. Like, just like it's okay for you to say, I'm cautious about who I allow into my house. Your house is your sanctuary for you to like regroup and to ground and be who you are. And not that you're not who you are everywhere, but it allows you that safety. And it's way okay to say that, because to your point, you love people, you're out and you're about. I'm a firm believer you have the 5 people in your envelope, which are the 5 or less people that really know the real you. And then you have your next segment, and then your next segment. And sometimes you're wearing different hats in that. And I think it's way okay to say, you know what, my 5 people are the people that I allow in and out of my house. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have a social get together or whatever, right? But like, to that point, I think like these messages sometimes that we hear that are not true, and then messages that we do hear, we don't trust ourselves. And so thank you for sharing that example, because it's a great example of where you trusted your inner voice saying, go shut it off.
Yeah. I try my best to be really, really sensitive to that, that inner voice, to be honest with you. One of the things that I encourage the women to do, that I have an opportunity to mentor or to teach or to coach, is that I said, be sensitive, be open, but be sensitive. Just be very sensitive. Don't second guess yourself, you know, and don't think, well, I'm just probably being, too much. No, it's okay to be too much. It's your life. It's your life. So it's okay to be too much in it, right? It's okay to just take a step back. Just really get to a place where you can just really hear what's truly going on. And then once you listen to your inner voice and oh, no, it's good. Okay, then I can go forward. But it's nothing wrong with just this is what I call it. I call it taking a beat. That's what I say.
Oh,
I said, take
nice.
a beat. Just take a beat. And then once you take a beat and you realize, oh yeah, I'm going in the right direction, or no, Gail, you were tripping. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was tripping. Right.
Take the pause. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
just take it. Just take the beat.
I was going to say, you can tell you're a musician because I call it the pause and you call it the beat.
I never thought of it like that, but yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Well, Gail, it has been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And if someone that's listening or sees this on Facebook or YouTube wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is either to, they can get in touch with me on Facebook. I'm Gail Leslie Tipton on Gail Leslie Payne Tipton on Facebook. And then, or you can email me at passionlife365@gmail.com.
Great. And your website's getting ready to come up. We're taping this and it won't be out for a few months. So by the time this is dropped, by the time you all are listening to this, your website should be up, which is the passionlife365.com, right? Or no?
Well, I have a Facebook page, Passion Life 365. My website is up already, the Living by Design 365.
Living by Design 365.
365.com. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gail. It's been a pleasure.
Debbie. This was fun.
It was fun. And for those of you that want to get in touch with me and find out a little bit more about what I do, I just have switched my website as well. And it is www.leadyourlituplife.com. So feel free to go out and check that out. And I would love to have a conversation with you. And with that, it's a wrap and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Find your own kind of happy.